Mrs. Lee, might as well. I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong, don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page, but we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay. Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay. Red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. It is Monday, Mo. How are you on a Monday morning?
I'm doing great. I mean, March Madness is, we've got the brackets set. NFL free agency is crazy. NBA's in sprint mode. MLB. There's just so much going on in sports. I'm just ready.
Mo, before we get to sports stuff, and we got a bunch to get to this morning, do you frequent the local Walmart? Just out of curiosity.
My wife more than I do, but I've gone there a few times.
So the local Walmart, Mo, the brain trust that is the local Walmart, they've decided that they are going to start instituting a new program, Mo, and for the great rate of only $12 a month, Mo, you can be allowed to use their self-checkout lane.
That wasn't that free before?
Oh, it's funny that you say that. Yes.
Maybe I'm a little bit out of touch, out of the loop, but that was free, and now the checkout lane has become something to charge for. Yeah, I won't. Guess what? Kroger's an option. Kroger's an option.
It was indeed free before. Walmart, to help combat the fact that they're losing millions and millions and millions of dollars in theft because of their switch over from people manning the checkout stations to all these self-checkout stations. They decided to go back the other way, and to help recoup some of the lost funds, Mo, they are now going to be charging customers a monthly or yearly rate, $12 a month, $98 a year. And this membership, it's called Walmart Plus, by the way. Walmart Plus will give you the option to use the self-checkout lanes. Now, Mo, I know what people are saying this morning. Well, I'm never going to do that. That's ridiculous. Until you find yourself in Walmart 30 minutes deep into the person checkout because you don't have Walmart Plus. Right. And I feel like people are going to pay for it. I think that people are going to balk at this initially and say, I'm not going to do it. And then it's either going to be one, they stop coming to Walmart because they don't want to wait 30 minutes to check out, or they just suck it up and pay the $98 a year to get in and out of there quickly. So I don't know, Mo, but you're right. Gone are the days at Walmart where you can just be a Walmart employee for free. Now you got to pay to be a Walmart employee.
That's, you know what? These are the signs of the time. That's crazy, though. So yes, I get it. You've lost millions of dollars because of theft, but aren't you going to lose? I mean, there's going to be a lot of shoppers that are going to be like, hard pass. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess some will cave because Walmart's all they know, but I think that more than a fair share
all they have.
Or all they have. Right. That is correct. So some will cave for sure, but man, that is a wild calculation on Walmart's part, but I hear you.
Mo, so we're going to take a little journey here. We're going to start with some comments that Stephen A. Smith made the better part of a month or a month and a half ago. And then we're going to circle to something a little more relevant. So it wasn't that long ago that Stephen A. Smith was being asked about Pat McAfee. And he had a lot of nice things to say about Pat McAfee. And this has nothing to do with their little blow up recently. at ESPN. In this conversation, Stephen A. Smith was talking about how he respects the fact that Pat McAfee is no BS. He doesn't pull any punches. He essentially just says whatever is on his mind. And Stephen A. was saying that he respects that. In fact, I'm going to read the actual quote from the interview. He said, "I love Pat McAfee, love him to death. I love his swag. I love the fact that he's an honest brother. He doesn't give a bleep. That's my kind of dude. That works for me. Now, is he as polished politically as me? Nope. Because he has no desire to be number one. And number two, if we're being honest, he's white and I'm black. He doesn't have to be. I have to be. So I get all that. I'm not knocking him for it." So that initially caused a little bit of a discussion because he brought the race conversation into it. And he kind of brought it into a forum mode that, if you look at it, I'm not quite sure it needed to be introduced into that forum. But I want to use that as the backdrop, because the backdrop of that conversation with Stephen A. Smith, and this was only a couple of months ago, was that because Pat McAfee is white, he doesn't have to be nearly as polished in this profession as Stephen A. Smith does, because Stephen A. Smith is alluding to the fact that maybe he is not necessarily held to a higher standard, but maybe his rope is a little shorter if he wants to go off the cuff about something. Later on that same interview, he also went on about how if you are a black person in this business, you need to be careful with the way you present yourself, because a black person being passionate and screaming at the camera can be taken differently than a white person doing the same thing. Fine. We're just going to hold that. We're going to pin that as the backdrop. And now we're going to talk about Ryan Clark. Ryan Clark recently made comments on ESPN about Lamar Jackson. And Ryan Clark, Mo, said that Lamar Jackson is the first authentic, that's the word we're going to use here, because he used that word. He is the first authentic black quarterback in the NFL. Mo?
And what did he mean by that? I mean,
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question.
For clarification, because look, and I don't know everything about football, but the first starting black quarterback I remember, I think, was for the Steelers. That was Shaq Harris way back, or was it the Rams? I think it was Shaq. It was Shaq Harris. There was another guy, Joe. I can't remember his name. He was starting quarterback for Steelers for a short time. But what is authentic? Because to me, those guys are pioneers because they did it at a way back when, right? When there was the stereotypes were much heavier. And I don't think they're any less authentic than anyone today. I don't think a guy like Warren Moon is less authentic, even though I'm not his biggest fan. Michael Vick was authentic. He was what he was. Never mind the things that may have occurred off the field, but as a quarterback and an athlete, I think he was very authentic. So I don't know what that means or what he's trying to say.
So authentic meaning that he is referring to the relatability and the realness of Lamar Jackson in relating to the black community. You look at Lamar Jackson and he is representing his black community. He is representing it in a real and authentic way. He is a real, insert whatever descriptor you want to use after that to describe somebody that you would consider to be authentic in a black community. Now, that everyone has an opinion, right? Ryan Clark can look at Lamar Jackson and maybe he relates to Lamar in some sort of way. Maybe he is seeing attributes or characteristics of Lamar that he relates to. Maybe he is seeing Lamar have interactions in his home community or in the Baltimore community where he is saying, oh, that guy is real. That guy is legit. Whatever the case might be.
Okay.
Mo, are you trying to tell me? Because this is essentially what he's saying. He is saying Lamar Jackson is the first truly authentic black quarterback in the NFL. So if you're looking at the black community, because that's what he's doing, this is the narrative that he has created. He is saying if you take the black community and however he sees the black community, he sees Lamar Jackson being the first authentic representation of the Black community, which means by default, Warren Moon, Doug Williams, Michael Vick, Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, Dante Culpepper, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston,
Randall
Cunningham. None of them were authentic representations of the Black community if you are to take Ryan Clark's comments at face value.
All right, so I've always been entertained by Ryan Clark, and I think that what entertains me about him is he speaks his mind. I don't like using that line "speaks their truth" because a lot of people say they speak their truth and they're lying, so it can't really be true. But Black people, we're not a monolith, right? So Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, Shaq Harris, Warren Moon, they all represent Black people in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not just one guy. I do think that if you want to say Lamar Jackson, he is truly being his real self, and maybe some of the other guys were more polished. You could say that, but Michael Vick's not polished. There's nothing polished about him. So I don't agree with that assessment, because that's a blanket statement for one man. And like I said, for even the failures, a Jameis Winston or someone of that nature, they all represent Black. You know what I'm trying to say? They all represent Black America. You don't just get to go, we embraced all the successes, you embrace the failures too, because that's part of it. The idea that one man represents all of us. It can be true that people like Lamar Jackson. He's easy to like because you can tell that he's being his authentic self. But I don't agree with that blanket statement because it doesn't make sense to me. I grew up watching Randall Cunningham, and I remember watching Warren Moon. And I don't know Warren Moon away from home or Randall Cunningham away from the field or anything like that. But I thought they represented us. You know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up admiring Warren Moon. I thought he was phenomenal. I look at a guy like Michael Vick, who lit up the league for about a 4 or 5 year window before obviously the troubles that he brought on himself off the field. He was exciting and fun to watch. I wasn't his biggest fan, but I thought he was entertaining. Again, though, he represented a certain section of African American people. Look, Michael Vick to this day, Chris, is huge in Atlanta. They love him. He's beloved for whatever reason. That's a weird thing to say. That would be like saying in basketball, a guy who's a very iconic figure, Allen Iverson, is the realest representation of Black people. I think AI is beloved and he was being his true self, but you can't say one guy represents any one block more than 30 or 40 other guys. They all represent us. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, even the conversation we're having, if you talk about sports media, Ryan Clark is a huge voice and he's got a huge platform, but he doesn't represent all Black people. He represents some. He's part of it, right? Stephen A. Smith, who I'm not the biggest fan of, he represents us too in some way or other, whether you agree with him or disagree with him. Jason Whitlock, can't stand the guy, but he's part of it as well. The idea that one guy is the guy, there is no one guy. Look at it from this point of view. People kill Russell Wilson. Whatever you think of Russell Wilson, because he's polished and he comes off as a company man or things of that nature, that might be very well who he is. He's low-hanging fruit. But guess what? Russ represents African-American people too. You don't think there's other guys out there that act or live their lives very much like Russell Wilson? Because there are. So I don't agree with that statement at all. It doesn't. I guess he was trying to make a point about how real Lamar is. I don't think, whether you like it or not, I think Russell Wilson's being real. He's being his real self. If I think Russell Wilson's corny or whatever, that's my opinion. But I think that's who he is as a person. God love him. That's who he is. I didn't like Michael Vick, but I thought he was being his real self. So I'm going to give him credit for saying he clearly connects with Lamar, but I don't feel an overwhelming connection to Lamar more than I do to a Warren Moon or Randall Cunningham. I admire them for what they do on the field, but I don't think Lamar Jackson is the single representative of African American culture. I'm not going there.
Mo, if a white analyst in the National Basketball Association came out and said that Tyler Hero is the most authentic representation of the white community in the NBA, how the hell do you think that would land?
Well, I mean, right. Right.
And I get Tyler Hero is not nearly as accomplished as Lamar Jackson is, so we can go Joker. I purposely moved away from the Europeans, but we can go Joker. All right, he's two-time MVP, right? Like, what if we said Joker was the ideal representation of the white community in the NBA, in a sport that is not necessarily dominated per se by white people, because let's also keep that narrative in mind.
It's a
right?
fact.
So if we were to go that route, those comments don't land well. Though that is not a conversation you want to. That's not a door you want to open up.
You do not. You do not want to open that door.
And that's kind of where I
crazy.
look at it, Mo. Like, why? What is the point of that conversation? There were so many things you could have said in that moment. You could have said, to get that same point across, right? You could have said, man, look at Lamar Jackson as a role model for the black community. Look at Lamar Jackson as a role model of the way to do it for black athletes who are coming into the league. Two-time MVP. He kind of marched to the beat of his own drum with his mom as his agent. He stays quiet. You don't see him involved in stuff. He's a win-first kind of guy. Like, you could say all those things and I think still get your point across without making Lamar the poster boy for your version of what the black community is. Because, Mo, no offense, if I take you and 5 other black guys, I think you all would give me a different perspective of what black community means to you.
100%.
And I don't know if Lamar is the face for all of you.
I'm going to say he's not, but there'll definitely be some people that will ride with Ryan Clark. Here's the interesting thing. Here's the flip side. If this could actually open up a broader discussion. If Lamar is the guy, what does that mean? What is Patrick Mahomes then? Is Patrick Mahomes as far away from being the guy as possible? Is that what that means?
I think that is what that means.
But here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes is part of it. He is part of it. There are brothers out there that relate to Patrick Mahomes. There are brothers out there that are like Patrick Mahomes. I know. I grew up with guys that was like that. We're not just one dude. You know what I'm trying to say? There's not just one guy. I'm sorry, there's not. It's a crazy thing to say. I would have rather him say that I can relate to what Lamar Jackson has done and how he represents himself, and I respect his charitable endeavors and all those kind of things. And that's fair and that's deserved praise. But to make him like the flag bearer of the African American community, nah, man. And this is not me hating on Lamar Jackson. Lamar is absolutely a big representative of the African American culture, but he's only one. He's one in a million. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the
other issue is if Lamar is the face, the natural question is, well, why isn't insert name the face? And once you start doing that, then you just start naturally connecting dots that maybe you don't want to connect. Well, why isn't Michael? Oh, that's why. You know, like, and that's a little unfair. Like, now you're gonna start. Well, why isn't Jameis Winston? Oh, he had that thing in. Oh, okay. Like, I feel like that's unfair.
Why isn't Doug Williams, who is the first African American to win a Super Bowl? Why isn't it him? When you look at the trials and tribulations he went through, being the best player in those god-awful Tampa Bay teams for years until he finally made his way to Washington. Why isn't he the flag bearer after all the things that he went through? I think Doug Williams went on to coach at Grambling. I don't know if he's still the coach there, but he's done a lot in his NFL and football career. What makes him a lesser representative than Lamar Jackson?
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. I know that it's a Monday. It's a Monday here on Coffee and Sports. It's usually a JG kind of morning.
Yes.
JG will not be joining us this morning. He is with family today. And maybe, you know what? Maybe that's okay. Because maybe he's not going to sit here and smile at me with all my Yankee feelings like
Well,
he
you
was
know he
doing
would.
last week. I know he would. So I get a little break today from JG's happiness on the other side of the camera, but he will be back with us tomorrow, I believe. So we got lots of things to discuss with him in the world of Major League Baseball. Opening day is coming up. It's not that far off, but we'll get to all of that hopefully tomorrow with JG. He's hanging out with some family, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. But Mo, let's talk about this big news in the world of the NFL, and this is a crazy story. Like the story itself isn't necessarily crazy, but let's take a step back and let's walk through the entire progression just to give everyone kind of the step by step. So Russell Wilson signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. So he signs his 1-year deal. I think he's getting about $1.2 million. Denver's footing almost $40 million on their end. Good for Russell Wilson. He comes in and he was given a press conference the other day. And someone asked, hey, have you talked to Kenny Pickett yet? Have you reached out to him? Da 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 da. And Russell was like, well, actually, a couple of hours ago, I actually texted Kenny. And I was talking about how, we're going to practice every day. We're going to be the best versions of ourselves. We're going to get it. It was very reminiscent to Let's Ride. But he was kind of giving Kenny the pump-up speech. Fast forward 3.5 hours, and Kenny Pickett is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. So you're like, well, hot damn. 3 hours ago, Russell Wilson is basically saying, let's ride to Kenny Pickett. And maybe he was saying, let's ride right out of town because you are no longer a part of this team. Then fast forward, and they make the trade for Justin Fields. Mo, the same thing you and I were talking about on the show on Friday. We said, why not? Why not go get Justin Fields? You only have Russ for a year. Let him tutor Fields. Let Fields work under him. Let Fields kind of hone his craft. And maybe he starts halfway through the year. Maybe he doesn't even see the field until the start of the following season. But you have your now. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, you potentially have your future in Justin Fields. People were kind of laughing at us in the chat, and that's okay.
Sure.
You have a right to do that. But then they go and do it. So that's pretty awesome for us. Let's pat ourselves on the back real quick. Good for us, Mo. But then we find out another layer to it. Pittsburgh wasn't the best offer for Justin Fields. There were actually 4 or 5 different teams that were interested in Justin Fields, and the best offer actually came from a team that has a solidified starting quarterback where Justin was never going to be the starter. Now, we can guess what team that was, but apparently Justin Fields' representatives came out to the Steelers and said, came out to the Bears and said, hey, he wants to go to Pittsburgh. We think Pittsburgh is the best fit of the teams that are seemingly willing to negotiate with you. Can you make it happen? And the Bears said, you know what? Sure, we'll make it happen. And let's be honest, Mo, they got fleeced. They got absolutely fleeced in that deal. It's a 6th-round pick. It can be a 6th-round pick. It can be a 4th-round pick if he plays more than half the 51% or more of the snaps at quarterback for the Steelers this season, which doesn't seem like he's going to, pending a Russell Wilson injury or just god-awful Russell Wilson play at the start of the season. He most likely will not hit that threshold, so it's going to be a 6th-round pick. And when you look at that initially, I was the same way. I was like, God damn. He was picked 11th overall in the draft only a couple of drafts ago. And he goes for a 6th-round pick. And that's the turnaround there. And it wasn't a 6th-round pick and a player. It wasn't like you got, a depth piece or a fringe starter for your O-line or something like that. It's just a 6th-round pick. But then you find out that the Bears did him a solid, so you can feel a little bit better about the 6th-round pick if you want to. You don't have to, Mo, but if you want to, you can. And now we look at the starting quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, and things look a lot better if you're a Steelers fan. Oh, by the way, Mo, Mike Williams is visiting this week. Mike Williams has a visit scheduled with the Steelers. He also has one with the Panthers and the Jets. Maybe the Jets might seem interesting to him because of Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. He could be a vice president by then. I don't know. I don't know why he would visit the Panthers. Nothing is happening there. Maybe they have money to throw at him. Maybe he's thinking he'll get a bag in Carolina. I'm not quite sure.
That's all that can be. That's all that can be. They would have to make him an offer that he can't refuse because there's nothing football-wise that they can do to help his career.
Not at all. Not at all. So now you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mo, with a potential, with the Mike Williams visit coming up, with Justin Fields now in the mix. By the way, we've seen the texts and the tweets that Russell has sent to Justin Fields. Very similar. If there's one thing about Russell Wilson, damn, that man is consistent.
It's almost like it's a what's that thing, the new thing, Chat GPT? You know what I mean? Like it's like on autofile. Like, come on, man, just be a regular human sometimes. You know what? This kind of goes back to that other conversation. Corny or not, he's part of it. I'm just saying.
He is who he is. So, Mo, as you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, from where we were a week and a half ago to where we are now, how do you feel about the Steelers?
Look, I just think they're extremely upgraded at the quarterback position. And you and I talked about this. It made too much sense, and we thought because it made so much sense, it wouldn't happen. You get Russell Wilson for a year, maybe two. And if you get Justin Fields, you have your succession plan in-house. Worst case scenario to me for the Steelers, the worst case scenario is Russ is horrible. Fields takes over 6 or 7 games into the season, and Fields becomes your quarterback going forward. You know what I mean? Not just of the future, but of the present. And okay, you're off to the races because I still think that Justin Fields is going to be a very good, I'm going to use the term playmaker, a winner. He'll be a quarterback, but I think that he can do a lot of things that Lamar Jackson can do. I don't know if he's ever going to be a pocket passer of that nature, but can he win games? Can he impact games? Yes. And can he get better? Yes, because he's such a young quarterback still. So I just think it's a huge upgrade for Pittsburgh. And look, if they're going to make it a competition, and they may at some point, I think that's the best way to go about it because I think that will bring out the best version of Russell Wilson too. Whatever he has left, I think it'll bring out the best version of him.
And let's not be naive here. I know they've come out and they said Russ is QB1. It's not a competition. Justin knew before the trade that if he was going to come here, he was going to back up Russell Wilson for the first year. I believe all those things. I believe they had that conversation with Justin Fields. I believe they had that conversation with Russell Wilson. I believe that everybody is on the same page. That doesn't mean that in the back of Justin Fields' mind, he's not thinking, if I'm outshining him in OTAs, if I'm outshining him in practice, if I'm outshining him in the preseason, maybe I can start that conversation. Maybe I can start that narrative. That doesn't mean in the back of Russ's mind, he's not thinking, if I slip up a little bit here and he's right on my heels, they might start having that. Like both of them are aware of the unspoken truth in the room, right, which is, yes, everybody's on the same page if everything goes as it is planned to go, which is Russell Wilson is an above average quarterback for the entirety of this upcoming season. And Justin Fields doesn't do anything Superman-like while he's waiting in the wings to potentially take over the keys to the franchise. If everything goes as planned, then we're going to see a full season of Russ, and Fields will be the backup, and we'll see where the chips fall after this season. But if things get a little wonky with Russ, Russ knows that it could be a short leash. Russ knows they could pull the trigger fairly quickly, and Justin knows that too. So let's not pretend that things are set in stone. At the end of the day, you're in a division with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. You need to win games. You need to be competitive. At the end of the day, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't paying a whopping $3.6 million or whatever it is for these two quarterbacks to not be productive and not win games, Mo. They have a great defense. They have a championship caliber defense most seasons. They're going to probably have one of those again. They need to get some more weapons on the offensive side of the ball, that's for sure. They need to solidify the offensive line. all those generic things we say about teams with good defenses and average offenses. But they won 10 games last year with nothing at the quarterback position. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the 3 guys that started at quarterback for the Steelers last season, but you won 10 games with nothing at the quarterback position. The Cleveland Browns went to the playoffs with nothing at the quarterback position. They were working with less than you were working with. It's been proven that this can happen. It just happened. So if they can get above average at the quarterback position throughout the season, this could very well be a playoff team. I know it's going to be harder with Burrow back. I know it's going to be harder with the Chargers if they're where they probably should be. But Mo, you have to go into it thinking we're going to be competitive in that division, which means we're going to be competitive in the wild card race, which means we're going to be competitive for a playoff spot. And if that's the case, if Russ starts to slip, Fields is going in.
Yeah. I think there's no question. I think, like you said, everybody's saying the right things. But and I know that Justin Fields is also thinking, yeah, Russ is a starter until he messes up. And like you said, if he outshines him in OTAs, if he outshines him in preseason, the narrative will start. And you know how fans are. If the Steelers get off to let's say they're 2-4, they're going to want to see Fields. And at some point, they will see Fields. And look, I believe Russ is going to be at least as good as he was last year. Agreed. And I have to believe if he's going to be at least that guy, that competent a quarterback, then the Steelers are going to be that much better. I think they will be a playoff team. I don't think they have a shot to win the division, but I do think they can be a playoff in a very tough division. But I also want to point out, we agree. I still think Joe Burrow was right next to Patrick Mahomes. There's a gap, and then it's Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow's coming back to a Cincinnati team. They have cap issues. They've had to let go of some players. Their offensive line is not one of the best in football. Their 1,000-yard back, Joe Mixon, is no longer there anymore. It's not quite the same team. So as great as I think Burrow is, I don't think since he's a shoo-in to be in the playoffs. I think they have their own problems and their own issues. And as a fan, you hope that Joe Burrow can stay upright and stay healthy.
But he's struggled proving he can do.
Right. So I think Pittsburgh is in a very good situation. And if you look at Pittsburgh quarterback situation versus Cleveland's quarterback situation, I think Pittsburgh's in better shape.
Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, they just brought in another quarterback in their quarterback room, Tyler Huntley. He was the backup for Lamar Jackson for the past couple of seasons in Baltimore. The Cleveland quarterback room now consists of Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, DTR, and the newly signed Tyler Huntley. Mo, maybe I'm biased. Maybe I just have a strong dislike for Deshaun Watson. But I look at those names, and I have a very hard time of saying another name in Cleveland and in the quarterback room, and then not following it up with, well, he's probably just as good as Deshaun Watson, or he maybe he can play. Like I don't know why I do it with every name, even with DTR, and I don't think that DTR is a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson. But what about Jameis Winston? I would say they're at least on the same plane. I don't think there might be feet between Deshaun and Jameis, but I don't think it's miles. I think that could be a legitimate competition at quarterback. And people in Cleveland might say I'm crazy, but unless we see some version of Deshaun Watson that is more comparable to what we saw in Houston and very elevated from what we've seen his 12 games in Cleveland, I don't think there's that big of a gap between him and Jameis, because we've seen Jameis put up numbers in Tampa Bay. We've seen Jameis put up numbers in New Orleans. So why would I think, if given the opportunity, he couldn't do the same thing with the Cleveland Browns, especially when we've seen Joe Flacco do it. And I think Jameis Winston's a better quarterback at this moment than Joe Flacco is. And we've seen other quarterbacks last season in Cleveland do it. So I look at this, and then you bring in a Tyler Huntley, who I don't think is the same as Jameis Winston, but at the same time, we've seen him win games in Baltimore when Lamar Jackson has gone down. So I just look at this quarterback room, and Mo, I don't see a situation where you're like, Deshaun's 1 and these 3 guys are competing for 2. I look at it as Deshaun's probably the starter because you're paying him all that money, but who is going to be the next option when things don't go as planned? And that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
I think it's Jameis Winston. And you brought up a great point when you brought up Joe Flacco. I think that Jameis Winston is very similar to Joe Flacco in that he can put up big numbers. He can push the football down the field. He has a habit of making a bad pass and turning the football over, like Joe Flacco. But already, Jameis is a better thrower of the football than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's advantage over Jameis clearly is his athleticism, which we really haven't seen much of the last couple of seasons. So, look, I'm not saying Deshaun Watson can't possibly have a great bounce back season. He could. But if he falters, if he goes down again, I think Jameis Winston is a great option. I think Jameis Winston, with what they have, not to mention, let's assume that they can get Nick Chubb back at 85 or 90%. They're going to be a better football team. Jameis Winston's strength is off play action pass. You got Chubb back there that you will respect the play action pass. So I think Jameis has a legit shot at. I think he's not to supplant Deshaun outright, but I think if Deshaun goes down, Jameis can step in and win them football games. And if he's playing really well, Chris, do you take him out? Because I wouldn't.
And it's going to be the same conversation that we had just about Pittsburgh a moment ago. You look at that division, you have the Ravens on top, we believe. They've gotten a little bit stronger. You don't know what's happening with Joe Burrow. You have Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. You think he's going to be all right, but who knows? And then again, you have a good defense. Now, we can argue the defense lessened as the season went on as compared to where it was earlier in the season, but you expect to have a good defense. And you have to look at it and say, we got to the playoffs last year with 4 different starting quarterbacks. And ultimately, the guy that really got us there was an almost 40-year-old that we had to pull off the couch halfway through the season. If you get competent quarterback play, average to slightly above average quarterback play, there's no reason not to think you can't do the same thing again. There's no reason not to think you can't win 9 or 10 games, and that's going to put you right in the playoff wildcard conversation. Do I think they're going to win the division? No. I think the division probably belongs to Baltimore unless something happens in Cincinnati where Burrow gets right and the weapons get right and he stays healthy. But I look at that division and I see all 4 teams are potentially playoff teams. So I don't know. Mo. I think we need to see closer to the Houston Deshaun than we've seen the past 2 stints of seasons in Cleveland. Because again, people may not realize this, but those first 6 games in Cleveland, when he hadn't played in a year and a half and he was rusty and he didn't know the system and all those built-in excuses, those numbers are basically a mirror to what he was last season. So if you look at last season and you're trying to tell me that he played great football last season, okay, well, didn't you also tell me the season before when the narrative was he wasn't playing good football? Well, he wasn't playing good football for all those built-in reasons. Those numbers are basically the same. So was he playing bad football that first year, or was he playing great football before the injury last year? Because they can't not be the same answer. When the numbers are the same, Mo, they can't be different answers on opposite ends. Either he played good football both, or he didn't play great football both. You can decide out there in Cleveland Nation how you feel about it, but you can't tell me one was good and one wasn't when they're basically the same numbers.
I thought the Browns were winning football games in the early part of the season despite him, not because of him. And I thought that, and remember, early in the season, they were a top 5 defense. And I think they finished top 5, but they were elite early in the season. Like, we couldn't stop raving about their defense. They didn't finish nearly as strong on the other side of the season, but their defense was what held them together because they didn't have the run game. They didn't have consistent passing game. Look, I thought Deshaun Watson was not as good as Russell Wilson, and we killed Russell Wilson. So I I don't know what to expect from him, Chris. He's so far removed from when he was with the Texans. I don't know if you're ever going to see that guy or anything close to that guy again, right? So it's one of those things where I know if you're a Browns fan, you're like, man, I just hope he turns it around because they invested so much money into this guy. They just knew by getting him, he was going to help them ascend to maybe even making a Super Bowl run, and they seem fairly far away from that right now.
Well, I saw some interesting numbers over the weekend, and I agree with Cottrell in the chat that when you're talking quarterbacks, you can't always just look at numbers. There's more to it than that, and I agree with that. But I saw some numbers over the weekend, and it was a very interesting comparison. And I'm going to ask you the question outright, and I'm going to tell you the numbers. Who is the better quarterback? If you were starting a team tomorrow, and these were the only two guys that you could choose from, would you take Trevor Lawrence or would you take Mac Jones?
Um, I would take Trevor Lawrence because I still think he's got that P word next to him, potential. I don't think he's realized it, and I'm of the belief that Mac Jones is a finished product. But so I would take Trevor Lawrence.
And I think most people in that situation, myself included, would take Trevor Lawrence because I think if you just put those names up next to each other, Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones, the narrative is Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback, tons of potential, and Mac Jones is kind of a bust. Now, I will tell you right now, I think Trevor Lawrence is a much more talented quarterback
Agreed.
than Mac Jones. Again, you use that word potential. You use that word ceiling when it comes to Trevor Lawrence. But if you look at their numbers, Trevor Lawrence, 50 games into his NFL career, Mac Jones, 42 games into his NFL career. They're very close to being a very similar quarterback. And I get it. Numbers are not part of everything. There is the eyeball test, right? But at the end of the day, Mo, when comes the point where you move past the eyeball test and you actually want results? When comes the point where you say, I don't want to talk about potential and ceiling. I want to talk about playoff wins. I want to talk about MVPs. I want to talk about AFC title games. Those are the things I want to talk about. Because I will tell you right now, even after this conversation, I will still take Trevor Lawrence over Mac Jones. I still think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Mac Jones. But 50 games into Trevor Lawrence's NFL career, he's 20-30. Okay. 42 games into Mac Jones' career, he's 18-24. 8 less games played, he only has 2 less wins than Trevor Lawrence does. Mac Jones has a career completion percentage of 66.1. Trevor is at 63.8. Mac completes more, he's a better completion percentage. Trevor has about 2,500 more passing yards, so he passes the ball all over the place. All right, so I'll give Trevor Lawrence that. And then 39 picks for Lawrence to 36 for Jones, 46 touchdowns for Jones, 58 touchdowns for Lawrence. Again, 8 games played differential. Those numbers might be a little closer if you gave Mac Jones 8 more games. And their quarterback rating is basically the same, 85 for Lawrence, 85.8 for Mac Jones. Lawrence has been in 2 playoff games. Mac has been in 1. Lawrence has won a playoff game. Mac has not. So, again, stats are not everything. There is something to, if you look at these two quarterbacks side by side, Lawrence looks like a better quarterback. Head and shoulders. He looks like an NFL quarterback. There's times where you look at Mac Jones and you're like, I don't know. And then you get the argument, well, Mo, Trevor Lawrence had that mess of Urban Meyer his first year in the NFL. That really derailed things for Trevor Lawrence. Okay, that's fair. Mac Jones had 2 defensive coordinators as his offensive coordinators for a year. How do you think that did Mac Jones any favors? So, again, I'm not going to sit here and say Mac Jones is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence, but I am going to sit here and say 2 things. Numbers may not be everything, but numbers still exist. You are still at a certain point a byproduct or a relation to the numbers that you produce. And there also has to come a point where production and results outweigh potential and ceiling. So I can sit here, and if you want to tell me Trevor Lawrence is a far better quarterback than Mac Jones, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I saw what Mac Jones did season 1 in New England. I walked away from that season saying, I guess they found their quarterback. Mac Jones is pretty decent. I don't think Mac Jones has ever had the offensive talent that Jacksonville has had.
No question.
So what would Mac Jones do on a team like Jacksonville with that talent? I don't know. I have no idea. I would have to imagine he'd be similar to what he was year 1 in New England, which was pretty decent. And if you look at Trevor Lawrence's career, he's been pretty decent. So do I think that Trevor Lawrence is the better quarterback when it comes to God-gifted talent and ability?
For sure.
100%. But do I think that Trevor Lawrence right now is miles and miles ahead of Mac Jones? Mo, I don't think he is. At least he hasn't proven it. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
I would agree with that. Look, I haven't been the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan, not because of his potential or talent, but because of what I actually saw. Just like last year when everybody was like, they're predicting the Jags were going to win the division. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I didn't pick the Jags. I've watched enough of their football games. There's an it. We all talk about the it. I'm not seeing it. Like he's played well, but I don't see him like taking that next step where we're trying to put him into that upper echelon of quarterbacks. I don't see that. I understand the talent, and I like what you said, talent and potential. Yes, he has all the talent in the world, but you and I both know talent alone doesn't make you a better player by default. It's what you do on the field. I've seen lesser talented quarterbacks do more than guys that were considered blue chippers, right? That's just what it is. It's what you actually do on the field. And we both would pick Trevor Lawrence over Mac Jones, but we would pick Trevor Lawrence over Mac Jones. Are we going to play the game of Trevor Lawrence or, you know what I mean? Because would I take Trevor Lawrence or Kirk Cousins? If you told me Kirk Cousins is going to be healthy, I'm taking Kirk Cousins. He's a better quarterback. Like if we're going to do that Trevor Lawrence or, he's going to lose more times than not.
Hey, the chat is popping off right now. According to Gene, the NFL genius, the Jaguars apparently don't have weapons now. Apparently, weapons don't exist in Jacksonville. Mac Jones might have given a left pinky to have someone like Christian Kirk on his team in New England. Because if you want to say Jacksonville has no offensive talent, then New England wasn't even lining up an offense. If that's what we're going to say. Because New England had no playmakers on that offense. Not to mention the fact they were the slowest team in the league. Not to mention the fact that nobody in that offense could get any separation. So if you're going to say that Jacksonville doesn't have offensive talent, then New England's a barren wasteland. But I digress. We can get into that.
The Jags have weapons left and right. And don't leave out another thing. Never mind that the Patriots didn't have playmakers. Their offensive line stinks. Their O-line stinks too. Like Trevor Lawrence, apparently they think they have so many weapons. They said, Calvin Ridley, you can go. I'm not the biggest Gabe Davis fan, but Gabe Davis is better than any receiver the Patriots had.
We got the NFL genius on the show on Wednesday, so we'll definitely circle back to that conversation, Mo. But let's move on to this. So RG3 is a pretty outspoken fella. I think we can all agree on that. So RG3 went on a little, I guess you can call it a rant, but he was basically saying that Caleb Williams has a lot of power as he is about to enter the NFL via the NFL draft. And he is advocating that Caleb Williams uses his power to get himself out of becoming a Chicago Bear, if that is truly what he wants. Now, if you look back at the history of the NFL draft and the history of the league, this has happened before. Eli Manning is obviously one of the prime examples that comes up. John Elway is another example that comes up. It doesn't happen often, and there isn't, a dozen or so case studies where you can go to have this conversation, but it has happened before. Now, first thing I'm going to tell you, though, is when you look at John Elway and Eli Manning, Mo, what do they both have in common?
Well, they were great.
Right. They won multiple Super Bowls.
They won Super Bowls, right? You know what I mean? They're Super Bowl winners, so they do have that in common. Yeah, come on, RG3.
So hindsight is 2020 when you're looking at Eli Manning and John Elway. Yes, they did it. You didn't know what they were going to be as they were doing it. But what they ended up being was John Elway is a Hall of Famer, multiple Super Bowls. Eli Manning is going to be a Hall of Famer, multiple Super Bowls. But here's the issue I have. And I know that so many people are pro player, and I am to a certain extent. But Mo, I don't buy into this whole I'm going to dictate what team drafts me nonsense. You are a college football player. You enter the NFL draft. Once you are in the NFL draft, whatever happens, happens. I understand there are better situations to go to. I am not going to sit here and be naive and say that you going to the Bears is the same as going to the Commanders, is the same as going to the Patriots, is the same as Minnesota trading up from 11th to get you at 1. Those are 4 completely different situations, and I acknowledge that, okay? At the same time, I do not buy into this whole, well, the players have all the power, the players have a right to decide where they go. No, that's not how business works. If you are a college player and you know that you are probably going to be the number 1 draft pick in the NFL, and you do not like the team that is coming out as the number 1 pick, don't go in the draft. If you want to control your own fate and that's how you want to do it, then go back and play college ball for another year. Make another 5 to 10 million, go win a national championship, go raise your stock even higher, and go do all those things, and then roll the dice next season and see where we are. Because nothing says to me, superstar, iconic, about to take the league over, as someone throwing a temper tantrum, that I don't want to play for this team. I didn't like it when Eli did it. I thought it was an issue back then. I was barely alive when John Elway did it, so I don't have many comments about him. But what I guess my issue is this. Why can Caleb Williams do it and Drake May can't? Why can Caleb Williams do it and Jaden Daniels can't? Just because he's number 1 pick? Well, if I'm the second best quarterback in the league and I don't want to play for Washington, and it looks like they're going to draft a quarterback second, why can't I throw a fit so I can get myself to New England or I can get myself somewhere else? If I'm the best wide receiver in the league and I'm looking down at the draft board and I'm like, oh, the first 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks, it looks like Arizona's going to take me. Who wants to play in Arizona, Mo? They're constantly rated the worst team by players in the league. Why the hell would I want to go to Arizona as a rookie? Why can't he come out? Why can't Marvin Harrison Jr. be like, Arizona, don't take me. Don't do it. Don't want to play. Why not? If Caleb Williams can do it, why can't, you know what I mean? And this isn't a knock on Caleb Williams. This is a knock on the idea that people within football think that college players coming into the league should be so empowered that they can just say, I will play for you. I won't play for you. Don't bother drafting me. It's a waste of your time. To me, that entire idea is preposterous, and there's no room for it, especially, Mo, coming from a time in college football where everything is player first. Everything is, what can you do for me? How much money are you going to give me? What are the perks that I can get playing for you? I understand that's where the college football game is going, but I don't think we need to further make the transition to the NFL go that way. I get it happened with Eli. I get it happened with Elway. Those are one-offs, in my opinion. I don't think we need to see a trend. And Mo, I have no issue with backdoor channels. Oh, rumors have it Caleb isn't really high on Chicago. He
Right.
would prefer to be drafted. If it's all unofficial backdoor rumblings, it is what it is. Because who knows if half that crap is true or not.
Correct.
But my issue is RG3 is advocating for Caleb to come out and say, Chicago, don't take me. I'm telling you right now, I don't want to be there. Don't waste number 1 pick on me. That's what I have an issue with.
Well, if he comes out in the draft, Chicago should take him. And if he's going to play football, he's going to play football for the Chicago Bears. I'm with you. If you don't want Chicago to take you, don't come out in the draft. You can go back, make another 5 or 10 million on NIL, right? You and I had this conversation. I think we had it with JG. We've had it with others that I'm pro player, but college football has already done their thing. They already have all the power. They have so much power that Nick Saban's retired. What Nick Saban said is, I'm not going to come in your living room and dance for you and entertain you and tell you what I'm going to do, because that's exactly where it is now. Now you have to tell me what you're going to do for me, not what I'm going to do for your university. It's completely flipped around. So I don't think in the pros, the way it goes is you earn your worth, right? That's the way it goes. If you've put in the production and you put and you've elevated yourself, you're going to get a bag. You've established yourself. I think when you come out as a rookie and they have the rookie salary cap and all that, where you get drafted is where you get drafted. And I'm with you. There are tons of situations that could be better, but that's the whole point of being drafted. If you're everything people say you are, then you're the right guy for Chicago, because you're going to elevate them and uplift that franchise because they believe you're a franchise quarterback. The idea that you can turn around and go, well, if you draft me, Chicago, I'm not going to report. I'm not going to play. All right, well, we'll just hold on to you. You're not going anywhere. I'm pro player, but I'm with you. I think you have to draw a line in the sand. If you're a rookie and you get drafted, where you end up, that's your lot in life.
And I get it. And I agree to a certain extent with Cottrell in the chat. Like, there are certain situations that just don't look good, right? Playing quarterback for the New England Patriots right now, it doesn't look great. It's not super appealing. I get it. But at the end of the day, there are 32 starting quarterback jobs in the NFL. And one of those 32 starting jobs is the New England Patriots. So if you want to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, Mo, I would have to assume you'll take that job, right? Right? Like, maybe I'm looking at it too simplistically.
And let's be realistic. Whoever the Patriots draft as a quarterback, they're okay. Jacoby Brissett's going to be the one taking the beating in year 1. You're good. You're not even going to play. They've got Jacoby in there to take the beating. So you're good. Sit on the bench, learn your craft, and watch him take lumps.
Let's wrap it up on a Monday, Mo.
Appreciate everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for starting out Monday with Chris and I. Check out all the great content that we have at Wire to Wire Network. You've already listened to us. Give us a like, a sub, a follow. We appreciate you. Wire to Wire Network.
Hey, make sure you're back here tomorrow morning. We got lots of more to discuss. We're going to break down the current state of college football. We're going to talk a little more about the quarterback movement in the NFL. We might have some Major League Baseball stuff on the horizon. All that and more. Coffee and sports. It's the morning show.